Drawing this cute deer is easier than you think, and I'm about to show you exactly how you can do it. Hello wonderful people, it's Genevieve, and my goal here on this channel is to teach you all about illustration and a little bit of design too. A few months ago, I posted this reel on Instagram, and it went kind of viral. And although I didn't keep the deer in the final image, some people really love them. So I thought I could go ahead and teach you how to draw them. Grab your drawing tools, and let's get started. Great, now we're going to jump straight into it. We're not even going to sketch in this video because the shapes are pretty simple as you can see, so we're just going to start right with the colors. And the colors are very simple. I'm going to show you my palette. You can see it's mostly just one green that is brighter or darker, so you can easily customize your palette if you want to have a bluish piece, a pink, green, whatever you want. That being said, if you want to follow along with me, as usual, I will add the X code right here on the top in the video, and you can also download this color palette. It is part of my freebies bundle, which includes a bunch of brushes, templates, cheat sheets, and fun things like that. And they're all free, so make sure to pause the video, check out the video description, you will find the link there to go ahead and download yours. Now once you have that, we're going to set the background color, and we're going to set the background to the darkest version of whatever color we want to use. So in my case, right here, I'm just going to pick in my color palette this super dark green right here. Now from there, again, as I said, we're going to just start drawing the deer itself. So go ahead and create a new layer and rename the new layer to deer. So here we're going to go with a lighter version of our background color. So if you're picking your own color, you would just literally bring it probably in the middle of the color selector here. Otherwise, if you're working with my color palette, we're going to pick this green right here on the top left. Now we're going to do this illustration pretty much with just one brush. So if you have a brush that you know you like in your software, please go ahead and pick that one. If you're working with Procreate, a free option that would work really well is in the sketching pack that comes with the app, the 6B pencil. But that being said, I'm personally going to be using the everything brush from my illustration bundle, but the brush is really not going to make or break the video, so it is not essential in any shape or form. If you do want to check it out though, it will be linked in the video description with a special promo code for the YouTube people as usual. And then once you have that, we're going to start by drawing the neck and the front of the body, which is just going to be a very simple oval, kind of like this. You can then drag your color to fill it in. Now if your color fills in too much of the page or not enough of the page, all you have to do is hold your pencil on the screen while you drop it, and then move your pencil towards the left or towards the right to find the moment right before the color fills in the entire screen. Great, now from there we're just going to create a copy of this oval that we're going to use for the body. So you can go ahead and duplicate your deer layer by swiping it towards the left with one finger and tapping duplicate right here. And then with just one layer selected, we're going to use the arrow tool. And we are going to rotate 45 twice until the shape is horizontal like this. Then we're going to move it to align it like this with the other oval. Great, so now we have the neck and the body of our deer. We can go ahead and merge those two layers by squishing them with two fingers. And the next thing we're going to do from here is draw the head, which is also very simple. We're going to essentially measure the width of the neck, and we're going to use that as a guide for how far away the head is going to poke out in the front. So it doesn't need to be exact, but that can just give you a bit of a guide. We're going to have a slightly curvy line at the bottom, and then a big curve at the top. And once more, you can fill that in. Although mine here is not super well connected. There you go. Something like this. Now these shapes do look a little bit crazy, but we're going to refine them in just a second. But first we're going to add the legs and the antlers. So we're going to have one straight leg in the front and one leg that is bent. The straight leg, super easy. It is going to be in the middle of the neck. And it's going to be the same height as this section right here. So from the top of the head to the bottom of the neck. So you can measure that real quick. And then you're just going to draw almost a triangle. So it's a shape that narrows, but doesn't end quite in a point. I'm going to erase my mark right here. And we're going to add a little triangle at the front right here to finish the leg. Now we're going to draw a bent leg in the front as well. So you can go ahead and roughly measure half of this leg to use it as a guide and bring it forward. And then you can connect that with the body. Same thing, roughly measuring the bottom just to give you an idea. And then putting that over like this. And then we can add the same pointy shape here just to polish up the leg. Now the back legs are a little bit more tricky, but it's going to be quite easy because we have the front legs to use as a guide. So first go ahead and just draw a little mark here in line with the bottom of that front foot. Now from there we're going to draw an inverted S, like this, which we are going to simply connect with the bottom. Then we're going to mimic that little foot right here. Bring that section back up and close the legs like this. Then for the other back leg, all you have to do is really just copy this shape that we have, but a little bit higher up right here. So we can start with the foot. Great. Now before we add the antlers, we're going to fix the body shape a little bit because right now it looks a tiny bit crazy. So what we're going to do here to fix that is we're going to, instead of having a big bend like this in the back, we're going to create a curve. So you can just extend the neck and make it flow really nicely on the back. You can also use the eraser and set it to the same brush you're using to draw. So in my case, again, that would be the Everything brush from my illustration bundle. You can use that eraser to smooth the back of the neck as well, so it's not as big of a curve. Now that does make the belly look really, really thin, so from there what we could do is come in the front and maybe have it poke out a little tiny bit. And then extend the belly line down like this. So it's not an exact science in any way, but it does look a little bit better like this than with the weird bend that we had initially in the neck and the back. I do feel like the head might be a little tiny bit small, and so that's a great example to show you if there's any body part that you're not happy with, you can very easily change it by using the selection tool right here at the top. And then with the freehand option, you're going to be able to draw a selection around what you want to move. And then using your arrow tool, you're going to be able to resize and move that element around. And then I'm just going to use my paintbrush to reattach it. Great, so from there what we're going to do is we're going to add the antlers. Now I don't have enough room, so I'm going to use my arrow tool once more, make sure it is set to uniform, and I'm just going to make the whole deer a little bit smaller and recenter it in the piece, or in the frame I should say. So the antlers are going to be really simple, but first we might go ahead and draw some ears, which are even easier. They're just going to be on these sides of the head, these slightly rounded triangles. Now again, the antlers themselves, super easy. We're going to start with just one and then we're going to mirror it on the other side. So what you're going to do is you're going to go right inside of the ear. You're going to draw a straight line that goes up a little bit taller than the ear itself, or actually pretty much the same height as the ear. And then you're going to curve that outward and then back inward when you go up. Now that one might be a little bit too small for my liking, so that gives me a good reason to show it to you again. So we start with a straight line that goes up, then you turn outwards, and then you turn up. So same thing on the other side. Straight line that goes up, turn out, turn back up. And from there, we're going to add the little secondary branches. So we're going to have one here, right when it starts to turn outward. I'm going to zoom in to show you. They're slightly curved inwards. It's barely noticeable, but it's still there. Then from there, we might thicken the whole antler here. We can add one branch like this, and then the small one like this. Same thing on the other side. Thicken the main branch a little bit. One secondary branch here, pretty big, again still slightly curving inward, and then a small one right here. Great, now from there, the last little shape we're missing is the tail, super easy as well. We're just going to draw this teardrop shape on the rear end of our deer. Feel free to pause the video here if you need more time to play with your silhouette until you're super happy with it. That was really by far the hardest part of this entire video. Otherwise, we're going to add a few very simple details to the deer. Now at this stage, you might notice that you have some noise in some parts of your illustration. That's just one thing that happens when you use color drop and a textured brush. I personally like those because to me they're a way to start building texture within the piece, but if they annoy you, you can quickly get rid of them by duplicating your layer and then merging the two copies, which as you can see gets rid of most of the noise. Great, now from here we're going to be able to add a few very simple elements that are going to quickly transform our silhouette into an actual deer illustration. So to do that, go ahead and create a new layer and rename that new layer to Pale Details. Now you could keep it as is, but to make our job easier, we could also use what is called a clipping mask, which you can activate by tapping on the layer right here and selecting Clipping Mask in the menu. And all a clipping mask does is now whatever we draw on this layer is going to stay within the shape of the layer underneath, which in our case is our silhouette. So we're going to go ahead and pick a lighter version of the color we've been using so far. In the color palette, it is this one right here, which as you can see is just a little bit more pale and a little bit more towards gray. And then with the same brush, although maybe a tiny little bit bigger, there's no right or wrong size here, we are going to highlight the belly. And so to do that, we're going to start by separating the legs from the belly. So you can draw one straight line here at the back of this front leg. Then one line like this, and a slightly curved line like this. And then all you have to do is tilt your pencil if you have a pencil that has tilt sensitivity, like the Apple Pencil, or otherwise make your brush quite a bit bigger. And gently draw over the belly like this to make it paler. And then you can come in and refine any sections you might have missed. You can use your eraser if, like me, you spilled out a little bit. But you can see it's very, very quick. It's not precise, but already it's starting to create different sections on the deer. Now we're going to do the same thing at the front of the neck. So we're going to draw a simple line here to separate the front of this leg, and then otherwise we're just going to fill the section in. Now once more I spilled a bit, so I'm just going to erase that. But otherwise, nothing more complicated. And then the last thing we're going to do with that color is just the bottom half of the tail. So you can once more draw a sharp line between the tail and the back. And then color in the bottom half of the tail. Great. Now we're going to do something very similar but with some shadows to help us separate some of the elements that are still all merged together, mostly the legs and a little bit of the head. So go ahead and create a new layer above everything you have and rename that new layer to shadows. Now once more, if clipping masks are available to you, we're going to use them just to make our job a little bit easier. So tapping on the layer and selecting clipping mask. And we're also going to use what is called a blending mode. So you can tap on the little N next to the check mark if you're working in Procreate. Otherwise, blending modes are usually with the opacity of your layers, so you should be able to find those in your software as well. Multiply is at the very top, and it's a super common one, so I'm pretty sure you're going to have it. And we're going to set the opacity for now around 50%. Nothing super precise, but just so we have a better idea of what we're doing, we're going to tweak the opacity later. Now these shadows, you could draw them with your basic green. I like to have something a little bit different, just so the piece is not one uniform monochromatic block. I feel like lights and shadows are a nice way to just introduce a few other simple colors. So I'm going to use here a blue, and as you can see, it is quite bright and saturated. Again, just to introduce a bit of contrast, because all our other colors are a bit grayer. So having shadows that are a different color and that are very saturated, very vibrant, is going to be a nice way, yes, to just make it pop a little bit more. So this blue, but you could go with whatever. And here it's going to be even easier. We're going to start by completely filling in the back legs, or at least the legs that are in the back, not the hind legs. So you can just quickly draw over those. Same thing with this one. Very quick, but already, as you can see, there's much more dimension in our deer. Then we're going to add a little shadow on the bottom of the tail. So you can just draw a straight line following the bum, and then create a slight gradient or soft gradient towards the top of the tail. And we're going to do something very similar, but under the head. So we're going to draw a line that's going to define the bottom of the head, and that line is going to finish pretty much in this middle section of the width of the neck. So it's going to look kind of like this. Make sure you take your time to draw one that you like. I think that's a bit better. And then we're going to once more just create this soft shadow underneath. Now we're also going to add some shadows on this ear right here. And then this ear, if we draw a shadow, it looks a little bit weird because it makes it look like the ears are just both in the back. So this ear, instead, we're going to draw just two very simple lines that extend from the ear onto the head. And then same thing with the antlers, we're going to create a sharp line on this one, and then a little gradient, and then this one we're just going to extend it onto the head. And then the last little shadow detail we're going to do is shade these secondary branches. Great, so feel free to pause the video here if you need a little bit more time to work on your shadows. Otherwise, we're going to keep adding details. We're going to add the facial features. We're going to add some lights, but later in the video, once we do have some string lights in the antlers, because those lights are going to inform where we need to put the lights on the deer itself. So for the facial features, just go ahead and create a new layer above everything you have so far, and rename that new layer to details. Now once more, you can apply it as a clipping mask if you want, although here it doesn't really need to stay within the shape because they're going to be within the shape anyway, so it's not a big deal. And we're going to zoom onto the head, and we're going to pick pretty much the same color we have for the background, but a little bit different. So if you're working with my color palette, it is right here at the very bottom on the left. It's probably quite hard to see in the video, but trust me, it's right there. So it is quite saturated and it is very, very dark. With the same brush, we're going to draw some super simple facial feature, starting with a nose. So the nose is going to be here in the front, and I'm just drawing a very simple oval with a vertical line like this. The eyes, you have a few different options. You could draw some very simple open eyes like this, so little ovals. You could draw some upward curves like this to make your deer look quite happy. I want my deer to look peaceful, so I'm going to draw some downward curves like this. This is something that is worth spending the time on because facial features are what we look at, usually first almost, when we look at an illustration. So if they're not quite right, we're going to see it and your illustration is going to bother you somehow. So take the time to draw them a few times if you need to. I'm noticing maybe my face is a little bit too long here. That doesn't make me super happy. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to select the nose, move it in a little bit, and then I'm going to go back on my deer layer here and just erase the front of the face. So this is a good example of what I just said. Make sure you take the time to play with the facial features until you're really super happy with them. Now you could keep it as is, or you could add a mouth, which I'm going to do. The placement of those facial features make no sense. In theory, we should not see this other eye. The nose should be in the front, and then the mouth would be really closer to the front if it was a real deer. But I'm going to draw mine here. It does not make sense, but it does not matter. And then the last thing we're going to do in terms of details is add some dots on the body, because otherwise it's really flat in some areas. So we're going to take a slightly darker version of that color right here, which in the color palette I think is this one. Yeah, that looks right. And we're going to draw 3 small little dots. Well, I guess they're more ovals than dots. But those simple shapes right here on the back. Maybe a little bit higher than that. Yeah, just like this. We're going to do the same thing here on the neck behind the head. And then maybe 1 or 2 here at the base of the neck. Why not? So again, by all means, please feel free to pause the video here if you need more time to play with those facial features. Use your selection tool, use your arrow tool, move stuff around until you're really happy with it. And then we're going to use a little bit of a magic trick that I absolutely love. That is a great way to quickly add some interest to illustrations. So we're going to go back to our deer layer right here. And we're going to use our section tool, making sure again it is set to freehand. And we're going to draw a wobbly selection that covers the leg. Now the exact shape of the top doesn't matter, just something along those lines. Then make sure you tap on this little circle here to close the selection. And we're going to pick feather right here. And we're going to set the feathering amount somewhere around 30%. So probably between 30 and 50, the exact amount, it does not matter. But what that does is that feathering creates a gradient within the selection, which then allows us to go in our magic wand icon here. And we can then pick any of the color adjustment tool that we have. I like to use hue, saturation, and brightness. And we're going to be able to change the color of that section in a gradient. So I'm going to make the bottom of my deer a little bit more blue than green and a little bit darker. So I'm going to move this hue slider here towards blue. So not a lot, probably 56%, something like that. I'm going to bring the brightness down a tiny little bit, probably just to 48 or something. And then I'm going to tap back on my selection tool to deselect. But if I undo and redo, you can see it's a slight difference, but it does add a little bit. Now we're going to repeat the step at the top, and this time we're going to make it a little bit brighter, which is going to help when we have the lights. So using the selection tool here, making sure it is set to freehand, and drawing a blob toward the top of the deer. Closing the selection by tapping on our circle. Then using feather, probably a little bit more this time, around 40% is what I'll do. Using hue, saturation, brightness in the adjustment panel. This time we're going to go toward the left, so toward a bit more yellow. We're going to increase the brightness. Maybe play with the saturation here, because sometimes yellow get a little bit muddy, so you want to make sure that there's not too much gray in your yellow. Let me experiment here until we get a nice color. Yeah, something along those lines. So I'm going to go with 43 for the hue, 58 for the saturation, and 55 for the brightness. But as you can see, that was definitely not an exact science, so feel free to experiment with the sliders until you find something that you like. So once more, feel free to pause the video here if you want more time to work on some specific elements for the deer. We're going to add the lights very soon, but before that, we're going to draw a quick background. Great, so once we have our deer, we're just going to group all the layers so that we can stay a little bit more organized. And so to do that in Procreate, super easy, you just swipe them all towards the right, and you select the group option here at the top. You can then click on the arrow to collapse the group, and tap on the group to rename it. Here we're going to rename it to deer. So the background, we're going to keep it super simple. So we're going to start by creating one new layer that we're going to put under the deer. And we are going to rename that layer to grass. So you can go ahead here and color pick the color you use for your background and make it a little bit lighter. If you're using the color palette, we're going to pick this one right here. And then we're just going to make our brush quite a bit bigger. And we are going to fill in the bottom section right until roughly here. Again, nothing super precise. And I'm drawing a bit of a curve just so it's not one straight, flat, boring line. Now you can see here I'm manually filling it in, so I have some gaps and a little bit of texture. You can use color drop if you want, but the background is going to be very simple, and so it's nice to have a little bit of texture at least, so it's not too simple. Now from there, we're going to go with a slightly lighter version of that green to add some dots and some bushes. And the color palette, it is this one right here. I'm going to focus my bushes on that back section just so we have a nice distinction between the grass, or the ground I should say, and then the forest. And I'm going to pretty much just draw kind of cloud shapes. So you can start with just one very loose line between the ground and the forest. And then with your big brush, maybe even tilted to the side, you can draw these kind of little fluffy shapes. Same thing on the other side. I'm also going to break that front grassy patch a little bit by adding some super simple dots, kind of like what we did here on the deer, but a little bit bigger and softer and on the grass. So one here, here, maybe another one here, maybe one in the front, maybe a big soft one here. That's too big. Like that. Yeah, that's good. So another trio here, maybe a duo here in the front. Yeah, that's pretty good. And that's pretty much it for the ground. We're just going to add a little bit of a shadow under the deer. So you can go ahead and color pick the color you used for the background. And just add a gentle shadow there. Great. Now the forest elements are going to be just as easy. So you can go ahead and create a new layer below the grass layer and rename it to forest. So here we're going to go ahead and pick this color right here, which we used from the grass. And we're going to draw some trees, starting with just the trunks. So you want them to be mostly vertical, but they don't need to be perfectly vertical either. It's kind of nice to have some that have a little bit of a tilt too. So try to aim for an odd number. So 3, 5, or 7. That just looks a little bit better, at least in my opinion. So I'm going to go with 7 here. And make sure that they're also slightly different sizes. Then from there, super easy way you could do is just come back in and add some little triangles like this to have a few more branches. But don't overdo it, just add a few here and there, otherwise it's going to look a little bit tangled and messy and it's going to distract from the deer in the front. So I would say between 1 and 3 branches per tree trunk. Great. So again, nothing more complicated than this. Now we're going to make some trees a little bit paler so that they look like they're closer to us. So you can simply just take a lighter version of your color. If you're working with my color palette, we're going to move on to this one right here. And you're going to drag and drop over some trees to make it lighter. Again, make sure you adjust the threshold as needed. So I'm gonna go with this. Again, nothing super complicated as you can see. But the last thing we're going to do to make these trees pop a little bit more is add some rings on them. This is totally a stylistic element. You could forego them if you want. And just to make our job easier, just like we did for those elements on the deer, we're going to create a clipping mask above our forest layer, so a new layer. Renaming that layer to rings. Activating clipping mask in the menu, whoops. So that whatever we draw on the string layers stay within the forest or tree shapes that we have. We're just going to go with our lightest green right here on the color palette, and we're going to draw some rings on the trees closest to us. So as you can see, again, nothing precise here, it's just the slightly curved line all over the tree trunk. And you're going to do that on the trees that you made paler and just leave the other ones as is. Great. Now the last thing we're going to do in the background is add some fireflies, which later in the video we're going to animate. And that's going to be super easy, but it's really going to make the whole piece feel super magical, so highly recommend doing it. And I say it's for the background, but technically we're going to put it above everything so that we can have some fireflies above the deer as well. So just create a new layer above everything, and rename that new layer to fireflies. Now I almost forgot, we're also going to group all the different layers we have for the background. So the forest, the rings, and the grass. Creating a group, collapsing the group, and renaming it to background. Great, now we're going to go back on our fireflies layer and we're going to pick a nice bright yellow. So this one right here on the color palette. You can see it is super, super bright and quite desaturated, so towards the gray. And here you can easily use a brush if you want to draw the fireflies. I'm just going to draw them one by one so I have control over what I'm doing. It's really just going to take a minute or two, so I prefer doing it that way. But again, you could totally use a brush. If you draw them by hand, make sure that you have some bigger ones, some smaller ones, and some that overlap with the deer. But make sure that those that overlap with the deer, don't put them over the face, because we're already going to have the lights there, so mostly over the body of the deer. And then once you have them mapped out, you can experiment with blending modes if you want. So just tapping a little N next to the check mark, and probably going toward the bottom section of the list, seeing if there's something that you prefer to what you have already. So something like soft light could work, something like overlay, maybe even add, but with lowered opacity. I think that's what I'm going to go with, which if you've watched any of my videos before, you know how much I love the blending mode adds, so you shouldn't be surprised here. But yeah, experiment with the list or just leave it normal. That's really totally up to you. So once more, feel free to pause the video here to add any element you might want in the background. Otherwise, we're going to move on to adding the lights and the antlers. So these lights are going to be super simple, but they're going to completely transform the piece. So you could go ahead and zoom onto the antlers and create a new layer above everything you have within the deer group, making sure it is not a clipping mask. Otherwise, it's going to stay within the deer shape, and that's not what we want. Now we're going to rename this new layer to string. And you guessed it, we're going to start by drawing the string. Now I'm going to use the same super pale yellow that I used, but you could just use a pure white or pale gray. And we're going to just draw a string that goes from one side to the antlers to the other and back until we have a shape that we like. So I'm going to start here on this side. Maybe making my brush a little bit smaller. I don't want the string to be too intense. I want the focus to be on the lights, so I want that string to be quite thin. But yeah, starting on this side, then with a slight curve bringing that on the other side. Making sure I'm really happy with my curve. It's worth taking the time to do it, right? And once I get to the antler, I'm drawing a straight line, essentially, that goes across to make it look like the string is wrapped around. And then from the inside, bring it back to the other side. Same thing, a straight line across to the other side, straight line across to the other side. Oh boy, that was not great. This, no. And I'm going to finish up by having my string come downward like this. From there, we're going to add the actual lights on the string, so you can go ahead and create a new layer. Rename that new layer to lights. Oh boy. There we go. And sticking with the same color, you could go ahead and just draw bigger circles for the lights. Otherwise, I have a free brush that would work really well for this. So if you haven't downloaded the freebies earlier in the video, make sure to pause the video now, check out the video description, and go get them now. And that brush is actually called Fireflies, but it works really well for lights like this. And it is going to be in the Nature pack within my freebies. I'm not sure where it is, but right here. Nature pack, Fireflies brush here. The brush comes with some instructions because you can set the color of the glow to be different from the color that is in the middle. And so we're going to do that real quick here. You're going to set one of the colors in your selector to pure white. And then the other color, you're going to set it to whatever color you want for the glow. So I'm just going to select here the left color, and I'm going to pick this nice yellow here. And now, as you can see, I have my white center and my yellow glow. Now, if that doesn't work, make sure that the color on the right, so the one you select first, is white, and then the color on the left that you select second is your color for the glow. Then from there, super easy, just pick a size that you like. Experiment a little bit before you start. That's way too big. Something like that. Now the brush is pressure sensitive, so if you tap hard, you're going to have bigger sizes, and that allows you to have a bit of variation within the lights themselves. But then once you have a size that you like in general, you can go ahead and just add the lights over your string. Now, if you want, you can play with the blending mode just like we did for the fireflies, but there's already some blending modes within the brush, so you don't really need to worry about it. We may, though, go ahead and lower the opacity of the string a little bit, because right now it feels a little bit too intense, so I might put mine around, I don't know, 60%, so we can still see there's a string, but it's not taking over the lights themselves. Great, now the last step we have to do before any animation is adding some highlights on the deer now that we have the lights in the antlers. So you could go ahead and create a new layer. I'm going to put that layer between the shadows and the details. And we're going to rename that new layer to highlights. We're going to stick with the same color we use as the color for the glow on the lights. But we're going to go back to the brush we were using, so 6B pencil, or in my case, the Everything brush from my illustration bundle. And essentially here the idea is to add lights or highlights on the deer close to where we have lights in the antlers. So I'm going to start here on this ear. I'm going to outline this top section, and just like for the shadows, create a bit of a gradient-ish on the rest of the ear. I'm going to do that with the front of the head as well, or the top of the head. I'm going to add a little bit on the back. It's quite far away from the lights, but you would still see them a little bit on the back and on the tail as well. Maybe even on the feet here, just because otherwise they're really boring. So you can just highlight the front top section like this, the tiniest bit. And then zooming onto the antlers, we're going to add lines whenever we have a light close by. So it's really going to depend here on where you put the lights on your piece. Might add a tiny little bit here on the back of the neck again, just to make it pop some more. And then we're going to play with the opacity of those highlights, because right now it looks a little bit crazy. So we're going to just find something that we like. It's going to depend on the colors that you're using. So it could be very opaque or not at all. You just want it to blend pretty nicely with the rest. So in my case, I'm going to go here with, I guess 40 looks good. Although I might just soften that gradient a little bit more. And then from there, we're going to finish it up by adding some pure white highlights on some sections of the head. So at the very top of the head, right here, on the front, just right above the nose. We're going to add one on the top of the ear too. Well, the ears with an S. And once more, whenever you have lights close by on the antlers, you can add these extra white sections. Great, so once more, feel free to pause the video here, take all the time you need to refine the illustration itself, and once you're happy with it, we're going to create a super simple animation that is going to completely bring it to life. Great, so the animation itself is going to be ridiculously easy. We're going to start by going in the wrench icon menu here. In the canvas submenu, we are going to activate the animation assist toggle. And that's going to open up a menu right here at the bottom. And it's also going to change the way your illustration looks, but don't worry, that's totally normal. So we need to tell Procreate what we want to stay the same in the illustration and what we want to be able to play with. So we need to create a background and then an animated part. So go ahead and open your layer menu, and we're going to create one big animation background that is going to be the deer and the background group. So you can swipe to select both of those, and then you can group the groups, collapse the new group that you have, and you can rename that group to either background again, or I'm just going to rename it to still, because I know that's the part that doesn't move. So now that we have that, we're going to be able to tell Procreate that we want this group to not move at all. But first, we need to make sure that there is nothing between the group and the background color. So in my case here, I have my example layer. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. And from there, we're going to be able to go in our animation menu here at the bottom. And this left little square that we have should be our still group. So if we tap on that, we're going to be able to activate this background toggle right here, which is going to tell Procreate this, keep it as a background, it should not move. So now if we tap play, nothing's happening, and that's exactly what we want. So the animation we're going to create is quite simple. We're just going to have the fireflies flicker. So we're going to have some turn on and then some turn off. So go ahead and open up your layer menu here, and we're going to create what is called a mask on our fireflies layer so that we can erase them just temporarily. So tap on your layer here and select mask in the layer menu. And then making sure that the layer mask is the one that is in the brighter blue, or lighter blue I should say. Go ahead and pick your eraser and just erase some of the fireflies. And there's really no rhyme or reason into which ones you should erase, just go ahead and erase them. Now the way Procreate works to make animations is it takes our layers, except for the still, and turns them into frames. Now a frame is essentially a page of a flip book. So it's going to take all our layers, turn them into frames, and then play through them, creating the animation. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a copy of our fireflies layer. So swiping it towards the left, picking duplicate. And as you can see, that adds a frame at the bottom. Now if we click play though, there's still nothing that happens because it's just going between the two frames that are the exact same because we just duplicated them. So what we're going to do here is we're going to clear our layer mask and we're going to erase some different fireflies this time. So tap on your layer mask, click clear, which essentially just resets the layer mask. And once more, just go ahead and erase your fireflies. Now if when you erase, you notice that some don't fully disappear, that's just a preview setting of the animation, which you can change here in the settings at the bottom. You can just go ahead and this onion skid frame option, put that to none. And then you're free to go back and erase some of your fireflies, again making sure you are on the mask and not the layer itself, as otherwise you won't be able to bring them back later. Now if we click play, we should see that some are flickering. It looks absolutely crazy because the speed is all off, but we see something is starting to move. So we're going to repeat the step a few times, duplicating the last layer we created, going back on the mask, clearing the mask to reset it, and then erasing once more. So you can click play, and you should see some more movement now because it's alternating between a few more frames. If you see that some of them are staying still, that means you never erased them. So take a mental note. In my case, I have these two here, this top one and this one right here, that are just never been erased. So when I create my new copy here, clearing my mask, I'm going to make sure I erase those. So this top one, these two here, and this one. I can erase more as well, of course, but I wanted to make sure at least those were going to be turning off once so that they can flicker too. So now if I click play, they should mostly all be moving at least once. Now you can repeat this step however many times you want and have however many different variation of which fireflies are on and which ones are off. But this tutorial is already way too long, so I'm not going to spend more time creating more layers. You have all the skills you need. You really just need to repeat these steps. But once you have all your layers, you can go in the settings and you can play with frames per second here until you find something that suits your needs better, I guess. Now for the purpose of this type of animation, so just something you would post on social media, frame per second, essentially you can liken it to the speed of the animation. That's really how Instagram and Facebook are going to treat frame per second. If you're an animator, don't come for my throat. I know that frame per second does not equal speed, and I totally understand that. But in this case, again, if all you're going to do is export from Procreate and then post on Instagram, that's essentially all there is to it. So yes, just play with the frames per second until you find a flickering rate that makes you happy. And then once you're happy with your flickering rate, you can export your animation, as I just mentioned, by tapping on your wrench icon, opening the share submenu, and picking in this bottom section, share layers. I know it sounds weird, but you're going to pick animated MP4, which is going to be the best option if you want to post it on social media. Making sure your frame per second is the same as what you had picked initially. You're going to be able to tap on export, and then you can just save your video, which is going to save it as all your other videos within your camera roll, and from there you're going to be able to easily share it on social media. And there you go. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to learn to create more simple animations in Procreate similar to this one, I highly recommend you check out this playlist because I have a bunch more for you. But before you leave, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because I'm back to posting a few times a month and that's been really, really fun. And then once that is done, click on the link right here, and I'll meet you in the next video.